So we're going to dive right in, I think. There we go. Okay, so just a little bit about me. So you have a sense of my background here with standardized test prep. I actually began standardized test prep tutoring about 13 years ago. Fresh out of college, I got my Bachelor of Science in Molecular Biology from Haverford College. And while I was a grad student at Yale, I started working for a local tutoring company. And since then, it's hard to believe, I've probably have somewhere around 7,000 plus hours of tutoring. This is in person, online, one-on-one group courses. Also at international schools all over the world, teaching SAT and ACT classes. And when the SAT changed to its current version of the test, this was back in 2016, I actually started writing questions for McGraw-Hill study guides and also as a content creator for numerous standardized test prep apps. As I mentioned, I'm the founder of the Tutoring Nook, and I'm also a mom, a partner. I love to hike, I love to surf, and I'm also always getting my nose in a book virtually every morning, usually 3 at a time. So just a bit about me. Now, for the workshop, just a general overview of what we're going to cover. We'll talk about the new digital PSAT structure and timing, how it's scored, spoiler alert, I don't know, navigating the digital PSAT testing platform, general strategies for the modules, the verbal and the math, a few study resources that you can use, and then question and answers at the very end. All right. So I imagine most people who are here are planning to take the PSAT as a junior, but some of you who may be here will be taking the PSAT as a sophomore, and maybe even fewer of you who are here may be freshmen taking the PSAT 9. So most of what I'm talking about today is the PSAT 10, which is what juniors, or I should say, sorry, National Merit Scholarship PSAT, which is what juniors will be taking. And here's a preview of what the digital PSAT will look like in terms of structure. So you're going to receive a first module on test day, which is the verbal module. And it's comprised of 27 questions, 32 minutes for those 27 questions. After you've completed that module, you will get a second module that is exactly the same in terms of questions and time. Now, for those of you who have seen a PSAT before, like the old PSAT, you might notice that this is a drastically reduced number of questions. So just as a quick comparison here, the old PSAT, between the reading and writing sections, which were actually distinct sections, now they're just merged as a verbal module, you had 91 questions to do in an hour and 35 minutes. Now, it's only 54 questions in an hour and 4 minutes. So that's one of the major differences here between the old PSAT and the new PSAT, is that it's just far fewer verbal questions and way less time spent doing them, which is kind of nice. And then you'll get a break in the middle of the test, a 10-minute break, and then you will get a math module, which again, you can see 22 questions on each of the math modules, 35 minutes. Now the math length is not all that different from the old PSAT. The old test had a total of 48 math questions in 70 minutes. You still have 70 minutes, but you only have 44 questions on the new PSAT. And another thing I want to note here is that the previous PSAT used to be a little bit shorter than the actual SAT. What's kind of nice for all of you taking the digital PSAT in October is that this structure is exactly the same as the digital SAT that will start in March of 2024. So you're really going to get a solid sense for what that test will be like in March if you're planning to take it then. The primary difference between the PSAT, digital PSAT, and digital SAT is that digital PSAT questions are just a little bit easier. You're not going to get as many tough questions as what you'll see on the digital SAT. Another major difference here. So I kind of alluded to this, but the digital PSAT and SAT have been designed to reduce time pressure. So not only is it a shorter test, but also the time per question is more generous on the PSAT now, the digital PSAT now. We're going to talk about how the test is scored and what you may have heard about the digital PSAT, which is that it is an adaptive test. So I want to be clear here on what adaptive means in the context of the PSAT. So adaptive means that while you're doing the test, it's taking into account what sorts of questions you're getting right, how many questions you're getting right. And based on your performance in that module, so say verbal module 1, you will get either a relatively easy or relatively hard module for your second module. So just to repeat that, all students are going to receive the same mix of easy, medium, difficult questions on verbal module 1 and math module 1. Based on their performance, they will then get put into a relatively easier second module, or relatively harder second module for both the verbal and math sections. I wish I could tell you how many questions you need to get right to get into that harder module, but I can't. It's a bit of a mystery. So the questions on these tests are weighted differently, and some of the questions are like somewhat paired or related. By that, I mean, if you get one question right and then another question wrong, that could affect your score more than getting both questions wrong. There's a complex model here that they use for grading the test, and I'm about to talk to that, speak to that point here. So, main takeaway, there's no set number of questions that you can get right that we know of to get to the second module. There's probably a range, but it's going to vary from test to test. So how is the test scored? The old PSAT, it used to be pretty straightforward. It's the number of questions you get right on a section, and then it was converted to a scaled score out of 800. Now, it's complicated. So the SAT or the PSAT, the College Board, uses something called item response theory. I'm not going to get into it, but I'll just tell you that it's a statistical model and it's quite complex. I sort of spoke to one of the things that it does. The questions are weighted differently, but they're weighted differently for a variety of reasons, not just difficulty level. One way that this model takes into account these questions is how easy it is for a student to guess correctly on a question if they don't know the concept, and how well these questions differentiate between students who perform well overall on the math and those who don't perform well overall in the math. It's a mystery. It's quite complicated, but the thing that we know for sure is that when you get your PSAT score back on November 6th or November 16th, depending on when you take it in October, you will have a scaled score between 160 and 760 for the math and verbal modules. And then together, you'll have an overall score of a 320 to a 1520. Unfortunately, with this complicated scoring algorithm, you will no longer receive score reports that tell you which questions you got wrong. You will get some feedback on certain domains, which we're about to cover, where you performed well or not so well, but you won't be able to see the exact questions that you got right or wrong. And this is a major shift for the College Board. In previous years, the College Board released October PSATs. They release the tests for the April school day SAT, the May exam, and the March exam as well, and the October exam. They will no longer be doing that. So if you take the test in March, you will never be able to see the exam that you took. And part of that too is that every student might get a different mix of questions. So there's no like set test that everybody is taking. Okay. So next, we're going to get into the verbal module here and what types of questions you can expect on the PSAT. Now, I'm going to forewarn you. There's a lot of words on this page, and I don't want you to worry about that. What I intended to do here was give you more information than you needed, but I'm going to actually go through and show you examples of these questions so that you've actually got something to grasp onto instead of just looking at a bunch of words. So, oh, bear with me. Here they all are. So what I want you to pay attention to is the fact that there are 4 domains here. You've got craft and structure, information and ideas, standard English conventions, and expression of ideas. And within those domains, there's a couple of different types of questions. More than a couple, a handful. Why am I telling you this? Well, it might be important when you take the PSAT to just know that within each domain, the questions go from easy to hard. So when you do the craft and structure questions, they'll go from easy to hard. And then when you start the information and ideas questions, those go from easy to hard. So it sort of plays into this strategy of you really want to prioritize those easy, medium questions. And you also want to be aware that the hard questions are sort of everywhere, but they're predictable. They're at the end of each of these sets of domains. Okay, so I'm going to show you. Oof, let's see if I can do this smoothly. I'm going to switch over to the Blue Book app. And we're going to cover this more in detail in a second, but I just want to take you on a quick tour of some of these verbal questions. So more on the Blue Book app in a second. This is what you'll be taking the digital test from. I hope this is, yeah, okay. So this is question 1 on the test. And just notice here that it's asking what a word most nearly means. This is a craft and structure question. They always come at the beginning. And typically there's a handful of questions that are asking about what a word most nearly means, or the most logical and precise word or phrase to place into the text. So notice that question 1, question 2, question 3, question 4. Okay. So the first 4 questions were those flavors, right? And then it switches over to a question about the purpose of the text. This is still within the craft and structure question types, but notice that this is more of like a reading passage type of question. So 5 and 6 are main purpose. And 7, it's asking about the function of the underlined question in the passage as a whole. This is still a structure question. And then number 8, notice how it's asking about something that the text strongly suggests about the site discovered by the researchers. This is asking you about information. So now we've switched into the information and ideas domain. So difficulty level sort of resets back to some easier questions. So this is sort of the hardest transition to notice between craft and structure and information and ideas, because they're similar in that you'll be asked questions about short reading excerpts. So let's just keep going. We've got some more questions asking about it, some detail in the text, so a piece of information, an idea. We've got some data questions. That's pretty standard. using data from the graph to complete the statement. Yep, this is still information and ideas. Same thing with number 12, support the student's claim. So I'm going to go ahead and blast ahead here. Ooh, different kind of question. Still information and ideas. Which choice most logically completes the text? You'll see this every PSAT you take or every SAT you take. And this will signal the end of the information and ideas domain, these last few questions. And then here it is, about halfway through the verbal module, you now get writing-based questions. And all of the writing questions are worded exactly the same. They ask, which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? These questions ask about grammar, sentence structure, punctuation. It's the same every time. So this is a really easy question to notice the shift into the different domain. So we'll keep going through this. And now we have transitioned into the last domain, which is, I think, expression of ideas. And that includes transition questions such as this one. And yeah, we got 3 in a row there. And then this weird question type that is a student taking notes, and then you want to come up with a specific answer that adheres to the objective given in the question. So this always comes at the very end of the verbal module, these notes questions. Unless you don't have any notes questions, sometimes the module can end with just the logical transition question types. Okay, so to recap, let me exit out of this. Oop. Oh no. Hold on, folks. I'm just gonna save and exit here. There we go. Okay, so just to recap, you have those 4 domains, handful of questions in each. Difficulty level goes from easy to hard within the domain. Okay, crash course in the verbal module. Next, we're going to talk about the math module, and it's a lot easier to talk about this module. So here are the concepts, very loosely speaking, that you will be tested on the math module. And a big difference between the old PSAT and the new PSAT is that they have really streamlined the concepts that you'll be tested on. So they test these concepts pretty deeply, and they've gotten rid of a lot of the ones that they used to test on the PSAT. Just to give you a sense, not all domains are treated equally here. So algebra and advanced math, those 2 top domains, each of them represent about 35% of the questions on the test. So 70% of the questions come from those 2 domains. Your problem solving and data analysis questions, it's about 15%. Same thing with geometry and trigonometry. Additionally, on the math, you have mostly multiple choice questions, and then you'll have a handful of free response questions throughout the section. On the old PSAT, they put all of the free response questions at the very end of the section, but that's the primary difference here, is that now it's just sprinkled throughout. And if you don't know what a free response question is, don't worry. We're going to check out the blue book and go through how to respond to those questions. Okay, so now we'll formally talk about the Blue Book app. And this is the application that students will be using to take the exam. And many students will be using their personal laptops to take the test. But if you don't have a personal laptop or a school administered laptop, when you arrive to take the test at school, you will be given a laptop. So all students will have access to taking this test. You can actually download the app right now if you wanted to. You go to the College Board website, hit download. And if you do that, you will see that you can actually take one digital PSAT for practice. That's the one that I was just showing you all on the Blue Book app. And there's also 4 digital SATs right now available for practice. The College Board is planning to release more over time, but for right now, there's just 4. So you are welcome to play around with that Blue Book app on your computer before you actually head into the Digital PSAT in October. Okay, got too far ahead of myself here. So we're going to actually head back to the Blue Book app, and we will resume this test. So I want to show you some of the features here that you may find really helpful for test day. Of course, if you went into test day and you just started taking this exam, you might have a hard time orienting yourself really quickly and seeing all the little tools that you can use on this Blue Book app. So one thing that's kind of nice, I don't know if you'll use it, but we have these little expand window buttons here that will expand my question window or expand my answer choice window. Some students like to see more of the question, some students like to see more of the answer. Do what feels good. I'm going to keep them equal here. You also have a question navigation button. So notice at the bottom here, it says question 1 of 27. And it tells me my current question. I have 27 unanswered questions, and then I haven't marked anything for review yet. But this is where you can skip ahead. So I maybe alluded to this when I was talking about, the easy to hard progression within each domain. But for me personally, this won't be true for all students. I find that jumping ahead to the standard English convention questions, so those are your grammar, sentence structure, punctuation questions, these are easier and quicker for me. And since I have a finite amount of time on this section, I myself want to prioritize the questions that feel really easy and quick. So I might go through these questions first and then keep going to the next set of questions, which just so happen to be, let me get through these. We've got a lot of standard English. Yeah, the logical transition questions. These don't feel hard to me either. Some students find that these most nearly means questions, the ones where you just have to focus on one word at a time, are pretty darn quick. So that might be something to consider for test day is, do you want to skip ahead? You don't have to do the questions in order. Another thing I'll point out is that you can hide the time up here. So some students get a little bit nervous seeing the clock count down. It affects their mentality during the test. So you can quickly hide and then show the clock again right there. You also have battery power. I just like to point that out. The testing center, your school, should provide a way to charge your computer should you start running low. But you also will be advised to come with your computer fully charged, so that hopefully isn't necessary. But who knows these days? I mean, my computer is pretty old and does not hold a charge very well. So for some of you, that also may be the case. This next tool I find invaluable. I really encourage my students to use it. It's this cross out answer choices you think are wrong. So once you enable it for the first question, it's going to be enabled for all of the questions you do until you turn it off. So if you want to get rid of answer choices, you just hit that cross off button. If you want to undo it, you can either undo it, hit undo, or just look at this, select the answer, and it will undo it automatically. You can also select the answer by clicking anywhere in the box. You don't have to go to the oval there. You can click far on the right side if you like as well. And then another feature that's really helpful is this mark for review. So one suggestion I have for you all is that, let's say, I'm going to make this up. We go to question 5 and we read it, we answer it, and then we say, oh, I'm not really sure 100% if that's right. Mark it for review. You might have some time to come back and look at that question. And then let's just say you go to the next question and you're like, this is too much text. I'm feeling really overwhelmed. I'm just going to mark this for review and come back later and answer it. I personally recommend at least just putting down an answer as a placeholder, because this happens on these timed tests where you're running down the clock, you don't realize that you're out of time, and you haven't gone back to answer questions that you left blank. You might as well just have a placeholder answer so that that doesn't happen. Okay. So those are some of the really important features here. Now, one thing that I haven't mentioned is this annotate function up here. So you'll see I just hit the button annotate and it said make a selection first and then press annotate. So I do this and then I hit annotate and then I have to hit save. I personally don't like moving my mouse around that much, so I want to give you just a quick shortcut here. If you find the command key on your keyboard, the option key, and then the letter A, I'm going to try it out right now. So if I select this bit of text and I say, or I press down command option A, it does it automatically. There are a bunch of shortcuts that you can use here. They are all listed. It's overwhelming. I've looked through them. I don't personally want to use any of them. But this one is really helpful, just so that you're not moving your mouse around. Okay. So let's say you're on 27, you answer it, and then you hit next. This is the last question of the verbal module. This is the page that you will see. Notice I have a lot of unanswered questions, some for review. But let's say that you are feeling complete. You are happy with this section. You are ready to move on, even though you haven't used up all the time. You are welcome to just hit the next button and the module will be over. And now we have the break. So notice here that it says, where does it say? Oh yeah, up at the top here. On test day, you'll wait until the clock counts down. Okay, so on this Blue Book app, of course, you can move on whenever you choose. But on test day, you will wait for that clock to run the full 10 minutes there. Okay, so onwards to the math section. So the first thing that pops up is a set of directions here. That's true for both modules. There's a lot of information here. I'm going to kind of show you what this is all referring to. So I'll close this. And again, you see the same features here, the mark for review, the crossing off your answers. Look how it was still enabled from my verbal section. You can still hide the clock. And then there's a couple of new things. So you have a reference cheat sheet, which is phenomenal for any geometry question. Anytime you get a question on volume, triangles, come to this cheat sheet. Oop, there we go. Oops, sorry, everyone. I think I just, here we go. And then you also have a calculator here. I'm just hoping this shows up. I'm not quite sure if these little pop-up windows show up. Could somebody just give me a thumbs up? Are these pop-up windows showing up for you? The little calculator? I can't see everyone, but okay. I hope it's showing up. So the calculator is extremely helpful on the PSAT. This is a powerful calculator. I'll note that you are welcome to use your personal calculator on the SAT math sections, PSAT math sections. And they will also, thanks, Kevin, they will also give you scratch paper. So you're welcome to use your own materials, but this calculator is pretty great. So I'll show you an example of how to use this in a second here. But those are the two main features that are different on math, obviously, than your verbal section. So what I'm going to show you next is a free response question. I mentioned this before. So our first 8 questions on this test were multiple choice, and then our first free response was number 9 here. And they will always give you this student-produced response directions on the left, and I encourage you to get familiar with it. So this is important here. You can enter up to 5 characters for a positive answer, and then up to 6 characters for a negative answer. So the negative sign plus 5 numbers. Some key rules. So this example page is really helpful. There's an acceptable way to answer and there's an unacceptable way to answer. So decimals are great. Improper fractions are great. Mixed numbers are not okay. They will show up incorrectly on the test. So just be sure to always use improper fractions or decimals. The next bit here is pretty important. Repeating decimals. So you have to fill out the full character spaces here. So if it's 2/3, the correct answer is 0.6666 or 0.6667. If you put in 0.66 or 0.67, it will be counted as incorrect. So good rule of thumb is always use a fraction when dealing with repeating decimals. Okay. So this question here, let's just take a quick look. We have line K that's defined by y equals 1/4 x plus 1. And we're told that line J is parallel to line K. This question is simply testing you on your knowledge of parallel lines and how their slopes are related to one another. Parallel lines have the same slope. So I would just type in to the test 1/4, and it gives me an answer preview. If I'm happy with that, I can just hit the next button. Okay. I'm also going to show you a question that is great to do. Oh, it's actually a free response. It's great to do with the calculator. So for a lot of students, when they look at a system of equations question, they might think to substitute or stack. Those are 2 primary ways to solve a system of equations questions. But now that you have a powerful calculator on the SAT, you can actually graph this. This question is asking for a solution to a system. And whenever a question asks for a solution to a system, it's really asking you, what is the point of intersection between these 2 functions? So I'm going to show you what happens here when I type this into the calculator. Y equals x squared plus 14x plus 48. Wow, it's really nice. We've got a great looking parabola there. And then I'll type in x plus 8 equals 11. And notice, oh, I got to zoom out a little bit, but we should have a point of intersection somewhere. Oh, there it is. 3,99. So my question is, what is the value of y? I just found it, 99, and then I can move on. So for those of you who feel really comfortable with using your personal calculator to do graphing to find points of intersection, you're welcome to do that. But if you're someone who doesn't have a graphing calculator or you don't have a lot of comfort with it, this little pop-out calculator on the SAT is pretty sweet. All right. So general strategies for the math section here. Play to your strengths. This is sort of similar to the verbal module. So knowing that the questions go from easy to hard, that's helpful. You probably want to spend a good chunk of time making sure that you get some of these easier level questions correct, knowing that as you progress through the section, these questions are going to start to get harder. Additionally, if you come across a question, sure, let's say number 7, and you haven't looked at SOHCAHTOA in a while. If this concept doesn't look familiar to you, immediately skip it. Put in your mark for review, maybe put in an answer. Don't waste your time. Come back later, assuming you have time left, and try to figure it out. So play to those strengths. Don't spend too much time on any one question, and don't feel bad skipping a question if it doesn't seem like something that is easy for you to approach, or if it seems like it's going to take up a bunch of your time. Okay. Well, I think that is pretty much it for the blue book here. Let's see if I can get myself out of here. There we go. Okay. So resources. What can you do between now and test day? Which I don't know when your test day is, because the College Board now allows high schools to do a wide range of test dates. So it used to be the same day in October for all schools, and now it's something like October 2nd to October 30th. Schools can choose their test day. So a couple of suggestions. TPAPT, so the Association for Test Prep Admissions and Private Tutoring, the hosting organization tonight, there's actually 2 options. We've got 3 tests that are $75, 6 tests for $125. Those are digital SATs. So you might find the content to be a little bit harder than what you might see on the PSAT. A free resource is the Khan Academy Digital SAT course. Again, this is geared towards the SAT, but it's virtually indistinguishable from the PSAT. You're not going to find, I don't believe, on Khan Academy, a digital PSAT course. And then, as I mentioned, the Blue Book app has 1 PSAT for you to practice with, and then 4 digital SATs. Okay, so here we are. We are at the question and answer portion of our